Hi friends, this is Terry Squires with today's Nashville This Is Faith. I sat down with singer-songwriter Kevin Shorey and his wife, Cindy, who happens to be the daughter of Mel Tillis. You won't want to miss their episode. When you get lost in the Lord's Word and truth, you will find your way through life. Recording artist, singer, songwriter, evangelist, and host of the AM Kevin Club, Kevin Shorey has traveled the world reaching the lost with a new understanding of God's promises. Thousands are being saved through his ministry. His wife, Cindy Shorey, the daughter of Mel Tillis, grew up in the spotlight of country legends. Together, Kevin and Cindy share Jesus wherever they go. This is their story. This is today's Nashville. This is faith. Kevin, Cindy, what an honor to sit down with you. You two have an amazing ministry. But first, Cindy,
yes,
you grew up in a famous family. You are the daughter of Mel Tillis. Kevin, you have a powerful ministry here in Nashville. My first question, how in the world did you all meet?
Oh, well, there you go. It's like the two worlds collided in Branson, Missouri.
Branson?
Yes.
Well, you weren't living here in Branson at the time, were you? Or?
She was. She was working for her dad, who had a theater in Branson. Was doing shows in Branson, and the theater. Her dad sold the theater, and it became a church. And my brother became the pastor of the church. And I was doing a service for my brother. She was there at the theater, church.
Yeah, well, I was actually there. I was working with the new owners of the building, the Assemblies of God at the time, and felt like I needed to come to one of the services and kind of learn more about the church.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, and so went to service on a Sunday night, and he was singing and speaking, and my good friend who was with me that day, she elbowed me and said, "You need to marry that guy. He's funny and he's good looking."
What were you thinking?
I was thinking, when I'm a single mom, I'm divorced, I'm Baptist, he's Assemblies of God, never been married, evangelist, it'll never happen. And last month we celebrated 20 years. So
20 years, yay!
God worked out the details.
So you were a single mom. Tell me real quick, because I know everybody want to know, what was it like growing up with your famous dad?
Really, he was just daddy. And we knew that, he had an important job because he would send us postcards from wherever he was traveling to. And he would bring home we had a shiny reel-to-reel player. And Daddy would come home from those songwriting sessions and put on the latest reel. And so it wasn't until probably in the 70s when he started being a regular on like Porter Wagner show or Glenn Campbell that we realized that he was somebody that people knew.
Well, how did you go from Branson to Nashville? Did you stay in Branson for a while as a married couple?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really an answered prayer because Dad, I was working and living in North Carolina and had a prayer list that I had really prayed over fervently. And one of the things on the prayer list was that I would get to spend more time with my dad. And a month later, the phone rang and my dad was saying, I'm going to Branson to open a theater. Would you come help me?
Do it like he would say it.
He would say, Cindy, I'm going to Branson. And it was an answered prayer, as I said. So I went out and ended up staying 29 years there. working with Dad, and then later on I ran a ministry for single moms with the Hershen family, which they're the owners, operators of Silver Dollar City, and partner with Dolly, and so I had some really great experiences there.
So you got married.
We did.
What was going through your mind marrying a single woman with a child and
Yeah, two. She had two children, and I'd never been a father or a husband, and I want to be a good husband, and as good a father, of course, but I want to focus on her for sure, and she had already done such a great job. It was too easy for me, for the kids. So yeah, it was an answer to my prayer. You know, I was just thinking how odd this was, or whatever the word is. The very song that I wrote out of being single in my 30s and wanting to be married, because I still believe women make the best wives. So that's what I wanted. So I'm praying, and God gave me on my 35th birthday this song, I really believe. And my friend and I wrote this song together called Speak His Name and You'll Never Be the Same, because God was just saying, all you need is me. Just speak my name and stay with me. I got this. And it's still been one of my most popular songs now today. And I'm singing this song on that Sunday night she came to visit, and the very song that she emailed me, I'd given her my information. I wasn't really thinking. I'm like, whoa, Mel Tillis' daughter, Pam Tillis' sister, you know. She says, I love that song, Speak His Name. And that was just the beginning of our relationship. And then 20 years ago, this past month.
So what happened after that? I mean, you wrote the song, you heard it.
It was a short engagement.
Short engagement was a long getting to know each other. You know, I was already now by this time close to 40 and set in my ways. So, you know, it took a lot of, okay, is she the one? Because she could be the one. We would go, and she used to call it...
it was Shorey Party of 30, because it was always me and Kevin and 20 other people, or, you know, going out after church. And I think God really intended it to be that way. And it, you know, having a failed first marriage, I was very aware of how, you know, going into a new relationship could possibly affect my children. So I just took my time and just really fell in love with the man that he is.
Well, it sounds like you have a heart for single mothers. And
absolutely, yeah.
Is it born out of what you went through?
You know, really, when I had the opportunity to lead that ministry, I felt like I didn't have anything to bring to the table, even though I'd walked that journey. I knew what it was like to sit on a church pew with just my kids, and I see now even more. It's still a passion of mine. I could always spot single moms. They come to church, and you can just tell that they feel very alone. And yeah, it was something definitely born out of that experience, and grateful that I had that opportunity.
So what happened after you all met, you got married?
Well, she had to get used to ministry, the world, and I was kind of getting used to the country music world. That was foreign to me. And but we both dove in head first, and here we go. We, you know, love her family. The Tillises are great folks. We miss Mel so much. And then getting to take her to, not the single evangelist traveling and doing, I was no longer, for some reason, asked to do singles conferences anymore. So, and instead, marriage conferences or you know, just to have her there in my revival meetings around the country. And I haven't gotten her to go overseas with me yet, but she's...
What were you going to say?
Well, you know, it was very different for me because, again, we went to church. We only went to church when my dad was home because, again, my mom felt more comfortable when Dad was in town. So just learning how to go and be at the church services, and it was a completely new experience for me. But I see a lot of similarities between country artists and entertainers and also evangelists, because again,
Both worlds.
both worlds, and being able to get up and tell a story in front of a crowd and keep their attention, and again, get up and make sure that you have your music in order, and it's a process, and so similar to what I saw growing up with my dad, just in a different arena. We always laughed about it. I said, boy, the country music world is a lot like the ministry
gospel world.
Yeah,
It
the
really
gospel
is.
world.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk more about that, some of the trials that you've gone through, more about your dad, more about your ministry when we come back. We were talking about how your lives collided, country music and all the music artists that you were involved with and around, and your ministry role. What was it like?
Yeah, well, you know, I knew the countryside kind of because I watched them on TV, and but my whole world was kind of only gospel music. That's why my mom, my grandmother, strict Pentecostal parents, you know. So my mom was a single mom as well. That's why I really appreciate her and her ministry to that. But she got the bad end of the deal, I guess. She dove in headfirst into not only ministry with me, but I then took a position to work alongside Jim Baker. And you know, that's not easy. Jim Baker comes with some history.
Yes, he does.
In Christianity.
What was that like to work with?
Oh man, see, as a teenager, I was a PTL singer. And then, of course, we know what happened to Jim and prison and all that. And when he came back to Branson, I went to just go sing for him. And he kept having me back. I became a co-host. And then we were married. I became a co-host and started singing for him after we were married. So she sees this world of behind-the-scenes Christian television, which we all love. Of course, that's why we're here. But those 10 years, I really admired Jim now more than ever before. You know, people can say what they want. I've seen the behind-the-scenes Jim Baker. So, and you have too, honey.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind at this time?
You know, it was very surreal because I was actually living and working in Charlotte, North Carolina, before I moved over to Branson. And so I had followed Jim's career just from watching him as well on television. So I can remember one particular night we had gone out to see a show with Jim and Lori, and after the show, Jim and I were standing in the parking lot just talking and having a conversation, and I thought, this is so surreal. I'm standing in this parking lot talking with Jim Baker, and he was just always so kind and generous, and we have very similar temperaments. We always laugh that we were both melancholies. And
so I'm hanging out with Lori because she's a sanguine like me.
So, but I just found him to be a very generous person in spirit, and I appreciated him for that. And just saw behind the scenes how he helped to raise, you know, I think he had 6 more children.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
And more than anything, he was like a mentor. It really taught me, you know, the power of evangelism through television and the media, which I'd always thought.
And you were there for several years.
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. And when I knew my time to start doing my own television program, well, he told me I was supposed to. So I'm like, yes, sir, I will. And we taped it there at Morningside, about the first 20 shows we did. And it was the Kevin Shorey show. And I thought, you know, this is mean I'm kind of edging out, and he's pushing me out of the nest, and in a good way. So we do the television program. And so that my phase of time with Jim Baker was over. And then her dad was really sick.
Yeah, my dad started having some health challenges. You know, he was just so busy and on the road so much. You know, when we sold the theater, my dad went back on the road at 70 and wanted to get back out with his band and tour the world, and he did that. He had, I think, 12 more years on the road.
Was he still living in Branson then?
He had moved. He had a primary home was in Florida.
Okay.
But we've had a family farm here forever. And so he split his time really between his home in Florida and Ocala and his home in Ashland City.
Okay, so he is back into the Nashville area.
Really wanted to reconnect with Nashville, and so it was just a blessing. And at that same time, I was praying about coming back home. My mother, who was living in Branson, she wanted to come back to Nashville, so we just began really making plans to come back. And then Dad passed actually the night that I moved my mom back to Ashland City. My dad had passed in Florida that very night. So, bittersweet because I wanted to get home and spend more time with him. But the Lord knew all, and just still happy to be back and be home. And
we figured to come back to the Nashville area where she was from, and I didn't know much about Tennessee.
So what year did you move back then to?
We moved back in 2018.
2018.
Yeah, in the fall of 2018. And Dad had just passed that November prior. So it was, as I said, it was time to come home, but bittersweet. But a good move for Kevin's ministry. I felt like, little did I know how many contacts he had through the gospel world and Christian world in the Nashville area, which is, again, I think just the power of ministry and the connections.
Well, even the country music artists, I've interviewed so many legends, and what a blessing. And they have powerful stories too with, and I'm sure your dad had some.
Yeah, well, he idolized like Vestal Goodman, and then he had Dottie Rambo that came out to the house, and
we had Reba on the show not too long ago.
She's amazing, but Dottie, I love to ride. I kind of ride on the side as a hobby, and I thought, gosh, somebody like Dottie Rambo that wrote hundreds and hundreds of songs for the Lord, and when she came out to the farm to record, it's really one of my favorite duets my dad ever did.
Mel and Dottie. People should look it up. It's great.
It's called "Remind Me, Lord," and it's on YouTube. And
Remind Me, Lord.
It's a really great duet with those two. So just another little blessing I got to see.
So from Branson to back to Nashville, what was that transition?
Well, I love it. Well, we're kind of in the country. We bought a piece of Mel's farm, and I still like it's a little Branson-ish and country-ish, but yet we're close enough to the city.
Yes.
So I love that kind of a world, and everybody comes through Nashville, probably even more than Branson. In my television program, I was using a lot of Branson artists. But here, man, the whole world comes through Nashville, and so, as you know, it's easy to get guests.
And you've done a lot of music yourself.
Yeah, we've done the music.
How many albums have you recorded?
Over a dozen albums, and solo albums. I've done those with other groups, or sang backup on others. But we had a few in the top 40, a couple over the years, and one almost. I'm the almost Grammy-nominated Christmas song we did a few years back when I was with the Jim. And Jim will say his song is the Valley Walker song, because he's all about Jesus being a valley walker, or anybody who will walk through the valley with you or has been through a valley will walk through the valley with you. Those are the people you trust. And so that's been one of the signature songs. It's done pretty well. So yeah, the singing and the preaching, and I just pray I'm a good singer that can preach good too, not a good preacher that can't sing or can't preach and a good singer. I don't know.
Well, we're going to talk about your ministries together because you guys are doing amazing work for the Lord.
Amen.
And we're going to talk about it when we get back. Kevin, Cindy, you two are doing amazing work for the Lord. Kevin, let's talk about the AM Kevin show.
Yeah, the AM Kevin. It was the Jim Bakker's idea, do a Kevin Shorey show. I wanted to call it something different. He said, but put your name on it, So I put my name, Kevin Shorey Show. And then we started doing the morning show instead of a night show. And we started using Facebook and YouTube and the social media, as well as some of the TV stations we're on. And now we have our own little studio. We used Mel's garage and turned it into a guest house. So then we had no place for our car. So we built a carport and then said, well, let's put a little building attached to the carport and for storage And we just last year got all of our stuff out of Branson after 8 years of being here. Or no, 7 years? Yeah, 7 years. Anyway, so but the back end is the studio now. So I have my own studio and we're doing the program. And because of that, the partners that came, man, I wish Facebook, YouTube would have been a long time ago, because the partners that have come on have helped our ministry, out there on the road. It can be, I used to travel with another evangelist when I was younger named Lowell Lundstrom. He says, in the ministry, some days it's chicken and some days it's feathers. And so I know a lot about the feathers. And so because of the partners, there's more chicken days than feathers now, mainly because they see a project like we did crusades a couple of years ago all over Ethiopia, my first time in Africa. And then we got an invitation to go to Ghana and was able to actually build a church building. I've done so many crusades around Europe, Eastern Europe, Africa, but never built a building. And so now that building, my partners and I, we together in Kasawa, Ghana, West Africa. And that was last year. This year, they got so excited. I said, we can get some property and build another church. They said, well, let's get the property and all together. And it's not like one rich person sending big money. It's everybody came together over Facebook and YouTube. And now we have a church in Kasawa. I'm about to build another one between Swedru and Kasawa in a little village called Inswa.
Now, are you going to every single place?
I go there, yes.
What about you, Cindy?
Trying to get her to go.
I've not gone yet, but I'm planning on it. I really, it's funny, as a child, I've dreamed of going to Africa, so I know that the Lord planted that seed a long time ago, so I will definitely be going.
And tell me more about your show.
Yes, and so it's a show similar to yours. We'll have live music and we'll have different guests. I mean, we've had so many, on the countryside, Mickey Gilley, Arlene Mandrell, she's great talent. Different ones like that, as well as preachers and teachers and authors, musicians, and even magicians or comedians. Whatever it takes, we would like to just use it as bait to lead people to the Lord, and we've seen that. I mean, one show we did with acrobats, and old guy says,
how did that
I know, right? They did it. And we was in Branson, the Chinese acrobats, and they did their deal. And the guy watches the show and he says, man, it seems like Christianity is more fun than I thought. And he accepted Jesus Christ. I can tell you story after story. People going to commit suicide that watch, and we just happened that day to do a program about that topic, and they gave their lives to the Lord and didn't end their lives. I have a couple of stories like that. And so I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because I just love.
So good.
And we end every program with Jesus is the answer for this world today, and He is. That's really what our show is all about. And you can find it on YouTube under the AM Kevin Club, or Facebook, just my name, Kevin Shorey. Yes, most weekends we're out speaking.
Are you going with it?
She does.
I do. I am also a homebody, so on the weekends I work full time. I work with Amazon as a technical writer, and so on the weekends I have to unplug my brain, and I love to get out. We live on. My dad had developed this property, and we had two Great Lakes that are full of fish. So I try to get out on the weekends and enjoy a little bit of the country.
See, I'm kind of with you. I'm a little bit more of a...
I like to travel with him. I mean, I'm able to really see where his gifting is, his anointing. I mean, it's just part of who he is.
I'm hesitant to take her anymore because once they meet her, they're like, good to have you here, Kev, but where's your wife? We really like Cindy.
But we would love to do, one of our future goals when I do finally step away from technical writing is to actually go out to churches and present a message on both, blended families and also couples ministry. That's something we enjoy learning about and talking about. And
it's so important in today's. It is important. You have a lot of single moms and marriages that
What's the stat on the single moms like?
Well, it's...
Because churches do not have real
there's
ministry
over 14 million single moms, and the majority of those are not in church. And when you think about, again, churches have more single mom groups than they ever used to have, but it's still very much a need in the church to reach out to these moms.
If you had one thing to say to a single mom that was listening to you today, what would you say to her?
Without a doubt, just cover your children in prayer and get into a Bible-believing church. And my kids can tell you, they know when we return. And, you know, for me, I always grew up as a Christian, but they remember very clearly when we really started getting involved in church and being there, and the kids talk about it, how it changed. It changes the trajectories of families. It can break things in your past that you've carried on, and I just feel like to be a single mom and not have faith is a really tough road to live on.
And you know what? The Lord, He's the Father of all. There's a covering over them, and they need to cling on to that.
Amen.
Kevin, we have a minute or so. What would you like to say to somebody listening to you?
Wow. For anybody listening, if you don't know Jesus, He is the answer for everything that you're going through, anything you're going to face, everything you are facing, and He will carry you to the other side. When I was at my loneliest and single and hitting 40, He answered my prayer.
With a song?
With a song. Speak His name. You'll never be the same when you say Jesus. And so true. When you call on Him, He is there. So rely on Him for everything, your past, your present, and your future. And He will help you. And He did good. God is a matchmaker. He put Adam and Eve together. He knows how to do it. So
what a blessing just to have you both, to hear a little bit of your story.
Thank you.
Pray many blessings on your ministry. Thank you so much.
thank you for having us.
My friend, are you struggling in your life? Like Kevin said, speak His name. You'll never be the same. Hang on to Him. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you.
Amen.
This is today's Nashville. This is faith.
Cornerstone Television wishes to thank all our faithful viewers whose consistent prayers and financial support have made this program possible.
Hi everyone, this is Terry Squires with today's Nashville. Look who I have with me, legendary Donna Fargo, the happiest girl in the USA. Say hello, Donna.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Terry's show.
You won't want to miss her episode. Wonderful. You will love her.